don't understand why you're 40 years old playing this game still. So.
Well, I mean, what game do you think you're going to be playing when you're 40? When do you think you're going to stop playing games? What's the age? What's the cutoff age?
When you're out of high school and college.
You're a high school kid?
Yeah, I'm in high school. Yeah.
How old are you?
Why does it matter?
Well, I mean, you foresee yourself in the future quitting something you love, like video games? Do you not love video games? You just cruise through it.
I mean, I think it's a little bit of a waste of time when you're that old. But.
Well, how do you know? You're not old yet. I mean, I can think of probably reasons that video games would be a waste of time for a high school kid, too. Do you have a 4.0? Are you in honor classes to get more than a 4.0?
No, but...
You know what I'm saying? There's more things you could be doing to improve your life than playing video games, too, right?
Yeah, you can study and not play games.
Hey, just recreation, man. Having fun. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
All right, then.
All right, hello everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Arcade. My name is Brian, and I'm here with John, the problematic white guy. He's having some technical issues on his end, but he is still here with us.
Indeed.
Yeah. So we're going to be looking at the news of the week, and there's a lot going on. So I wanted to just jump right on in. But first of all, John, how are you doing? How's your week?
Oh, you know. Awesome as always. I actually started a new series this week called 3 Sages in a Time Machine, but there's 5 of us on the show, so not accounting for math, we're doing really well with it. I think we did our first episode on conspiracy theories of the CIA being behind the music industry and the explosion of the counterculture back in the 60s. So that's kind of cool. We'll be doing our next episode of that on Monday, but I'll talk about that more at the end of the show. But yeah, no, things are going good. Can't really complain.
All right. Yeah, all right, good. Well, yes, that sounds great. You know, my week is busy as usual, just cranking out different kinds of content on multiple platforms, but I'm feeling pretty good about today's show. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. I thought I would display this image from Elden Ring, which is about as awesomely classically fantasy as it gets, really. And the reason for this is because of this story from Fandom Pulse, but a lot of other people in the new media space. That's what I like to think of the space that we are here creating. Legacy media is dying. And Elon Musk has even, considered buying MSNBC, for example, because they're probably going to end up selling it. NBC is cutting it loose because MSNBC is so bad for their brand. We are the new media, guys. We are the media now. We're going to be talking about, what's going on in our culture, in our world, from a perspective that is probably more based in reality, hence reality based. Okay, so
indeed,
there's a Sony insider that spoke to Endymion, who is a YouTube content creator, also part of the new media, that explained the reason for Sony wanting to purchase a company called Kadokawa. Kadokawa is the parent company of video game developers Spike Chunsoft and From Software, as well as manga and light novel publisher Kadokawa Shoten, which publishes popular titles such as Sword Art Online, Mobile Suit Gundam, Konosuba, Record of Lodoss War, a personal favorite of mine, Neon Genesis Evangelion, Code Geass, Cowboy Bebop, and more. So why are they doing this? Of course, right now there's articles on this acquisition of Kadokawa Corporation by Sony Group Inc., but this has not officially been announced by the company itself. There is an internal letter of intent to acquire the company's shares, but no decision has been made at this time. If there are any facts that should be announced in the future, we will make an announcement in a timely and appropriate manner, according to Kadokawa CEO Takeshi Natsuno in a press release. So there was an insider from Kadokawa that approached Endymion explaining what this is about. And of course, this shouldn't be shocking when you learn what it is, because I think we all saw the writing on the wall. But I thought it's nice to hear it being officially stated, at least from someone who is supposedly an insider. So from what I'm told by my source, according to the insider, The reason why Sony Japan wants to own Kadokawa and From Software is because they are extremely frustrated by the constant underperformances of their Western-led projects. We're talking about things like God of War, The Last of Us, and of course, Concord being a big thorn in their side right now, and how that all went down. And more on Concord a little bit later. So Sony Japan is very angry that what used to be a promising Western push by their teams over in Sony America, that they're no longer making the big hits that they were accustomed to having before. Endymion continued, as I'm told, Kadokawa entering PlayStation's brand and in turn From Software is seen as a massive opportunity in Sony Japan's eyes to vastly strengthen and rebuild their PlayStation brand into what they deem is important and what PlayStation should stand for as a platform in the future. He also added, so they see things like the Elden Ring, the Elden Ring success. I mean, Elden Ring's DLC is basically up for Game of the Year, which, again, we might talk about a little bit later. But and also the constant love for properties like Dark Souls or Sekiro to be something that should be intrinsically tied to what Sony Japan wants to continue and foster in the future. A little bit later, after claiming that there is a bidding war, and this is another thing that you guys probably should know, it's a bidding war between Sony Incorporated and Tencent, Endymion revealed that his insider told him that Sony, quote, wants to completely change their outlook going forward when it comes to how they make their games and who they're making those games for. How about making them for gamers? They want to be seen as a Japanese first developer creating experiences more in line with what they used to be known for as opposed to now. So there's no word on whether or not this is like finalized, but apparently there is a bidding war between Tencent and Sony to buy Kadokawa. Okay, so I guess I'll ask you, John, if you have any thoughts on this before I give mine.
Yeah. Well, to my understanding, the company, seeing that they're going to get purchased kind of one way or the other, they're basically, from what I understand, they're asking Sony, they approach Sony to do the purchase. So, I mean, in that regard, if they're going to end up getting gobbled up by somebody, if they're, wanting to go with Sony, then I guess that's probably about the best you could legitimately hope for.
I was going to say, what do you think is better, Sony or Tencent? I mean, hopefully there'd be like a third option, but
right, these days, quite honestly, Sony is pretty terrible. But if we're talking about Sony Japan, that's a lot better than Sony America. So I mean, Sony's a very interesting company at the moment. It seems like it's kind of lost its identity, or at least lost its way, most assuredly.
Oh, absolutely.
All their systems seem to be chasing after way too much money, and like not actually having any foundation on something substantial for people to get invested into or anything like that. So and the idea of even trying to chase after exclusives in 2024, I mean, it's just I don't know, it's Sony seems to be kind of acting in some level of desperation that kind of is present in all forms of legacy mainstream medias. So I can't say that it's all too shocking that this is what's happening, but I don't know. Either way, it's going to be another instance of a company that's kind of getting folded into a larger corporation to just be a subsidiary.
Yeah.
And how long they're able to sustain that from there is anybody's guess. So
yeah,
I don't know. Tencent is, obviously highly Chinese, and with that comes a certain level of kind of, trepidation because of, the CCCP, however many C's. Anyways, being involved in
CC, I think it's just two.
Ultimately, they seem to be more. Yeah, they seem to be more concerned about profiteering at this point in time than really doing anything with ideological kind of fuckery. So, I I suppose it could kind of go either way, but I like I say, given that the company's approached Sony about being involved in the purchase, I a big fan of self-determination. So if that's what they want, then I guess whatever kind of ends up happening, it's gonna be what it is. I'm not like a huge Elden Ring fan.
Yeah.
Like
Any of the FromSoft stuff,
Souls games here or
Right.
there. Like I never. Yeah, I never got the big that big into it like so many other people have. So to me, it's just kind of like it's a thing. So, I don't know.
Yeah. So that's okay. I'll give my
something
thoughts.
will happen, and it'll.
There appears to be a bit of a delay between when I talk and when you hear me, but I'll give my thoughts on it. So I guess I tend to lean towards the artistic freedom above, like say, like whether or not the company is how evil the company is that owns the property. So if I look at it like this, I see on the one side we have Sony that wants to buy the company. If Sony buys the company, then From Software will be in a position where it can only make exclusive content for the Sony, consoles going forward or whatever the brand is. And that's a problem because it's going to limit people's access to their products. I mean, one of the reasons why Dark Souls was a success where Demon Souls was not, or at least less of a success, was because Demon Souls, despite, what there was about it that was good, like it obviously had good DNA that Dark Souls built on, it was only available to people who owned a PlayStation 3 in the same way that Bloodborne was only available to people with PlayStation consoles. And, meanwhile, people who had basically having it available on more content, on more consoles or more platforms is just generally better. And Sony also is at the point now where I think that, I don't know about the Japanese branch, but I know the Western branch is like completely paused. Like they're just gonna, make people put in their DEI, ESG garbage, and it's going to screw the game up. And they're literally saying they're frustrated with the sales of Concord, God of War, and there was like another title that they brought up. Let me just look at it really quick. The Last of Us. Yeah, and those things were totally paused. Like they had good bones, but they ended up going off the rails. So that being the Western Sony, I don't know about the Japanese Sony. Maybe they're not as bad. Then on the other side, you got Tencent, and if Tencent is simply a vehicle for the Chinese government to essentially get more profits and compete with the Western markets, but the only way they'll do that is to essentially like allow From Software and Kadokawa to have essentially like the freedom to create the content that they want. And if Tencent allows them to be unrestrained, I think where Sony would probably try to be more, micromanagey. I have a feeling that under Tencent, From Software would probably make better products. Now, what I would prefer would be that there be like some third party, or maybe they go and just strike out on their own. I mean, I think that From Software has enough of a following that they could probably make it. But I think that this is like, if this is what it comes down to, I gotta admit, I'm kind of siding with the Chinese on this. I'm sorry, but like I don't. Sony has burned like bridges for me that I don't know that they can fix. I mean, I generally I'm open to forgiveness, but I'm gonna have to see some changes going forward. So,
indeed, no, I totally get that.
Yeah. So anyway, let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. And what do you think? Do you think that, From Software and Kadokawa would be better off under Sony if Sony can straighten up, Sony Japan specifically? Or do you think they'd be better if Tencent owned yet another company, which is the part of that bothers me, is that Tencent owns so much.
That's what I mean by no matter what, it's going to be some intellectual property house that ends up just
or if they basically just say, you know what, maybe we don't need your budgets, and they just break off on their own. Because I think that like FromSoft has enough of and then some of these other brands like Gundam, I mean, these are pretty strong brands that could probably strike out on their own and do something new. Or Elon Musk will buy them, as he's been buying everything else. So
right. Well, I'm always a fan of more independence wherever possible. So, it'd be great if they could find a way to, remain masters of their own domain in this situation, rather than getting themselves over and just being another familiar yet possibly empty brand within a few years.
Absolutely.
So, I don't know. Like I said, it would probably affect me more if I was really into the games. But yeah, I prefer like them having the ability to end up on Steam decks and things like that a lot easier. So I mean, Sony unfortunately is going to be, if it ends up in the hands of Sony, it's going to be Sony exclusive all the time. But I mean, even Sony stuff ends up on Steam nowadays, so it's kind of almost a moot point in some ways. It's just a matter of how much fuckery they'll have to deal with on the, corporate scale, depending on who they're owned by.
And it is worth pointing out that Elon Musk did say in an interview with Lex Friedman that Elden Ring is his favorite video game of all time. So maybe he's actually paying attention to this purchase. Maybe. I mean, it's something that he would probably be invested in. And speaking of Elon Musk, Elon Musk, I'm going to move on to the next story. That's kind of like my transition. Elon Musk has taken to Twitter to essentially tell Wizards of the Coast to burn in hell over the company's latest trashing of Gary Gygax, D&D creator Gary Gygax. So let me go into this a little bit. All right, so out of curiosity, John, have you ever played tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons before?
Oh, of course. I mean, like I went to art school for game design.
I wasn't sure.
We had to like play test on board games and everything. So I made a board game. It's called Armageddon Warfare. It's like I made it like 20 years ago. Yeah, I built it. I did a backward engineering off of a PlayStation controller and Metal Gear Solid to figure out how to do 360-degree targeting rotations with like scaled range drop off and all this kind of stuff, and 360-degree damage detection on a playcast character. So yeah, nice. I played a little bit.
all right. Well, okay, we're gonna get into this, but first, I did get a super. Oh no, I'm sorry, it's not a super chat. It's a Rumble rant from Zaranx. He gave us $5 and said, "Thank you, Zaranx. So I heard Jim Cramer said Bitcoin was a good investment. How bad do you think the dip's going to be?" I don't know much about crypto. I'm not the person to ask, but I'm sure that someone else in chat or John might have an opinion. Generally, though, if Jim Cramer supports it, I'm a little suspicious. Isn't he like the guy from like CNN or something?
Yeah. He was on CNN or MSNBC, one of the two.
Yeah, he did a cameo in Iron Man.
The guy looks kind of like Louis C.K., but lame.
Yeah, right. He does. I never thought of it that way. He does look like Louis C.K. And he has sound effects and like horns and bells and stuff to keep people's attention while he talks about like economics, and the stock market. But yeah, I didn't know that, but that's a little bit worrying. Thank you, Zaranx. I mean, I think so because I don't trust Jim Cramer as far as, Art Fresco says he likes the stock. Okay, anyway, so Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast have been on a crusade to transform Dungeons & Dragons from the fantasy adventuring monster-slaying tabletop RPG everyone loves into an identity politics-fueled social game, evoking a lot of fan criticism, and this has been going on for years. I've been playing Dungeons & Dragons since I was 14 years old, and other role-playing games as a result, like tabletop games, and I've always found, and still to this day, think that no matter how advanced video games have gotten, they can't do what tabletop can do with the right people. That's extremely key. So, but anyway, now Elon Musk savaged the company after World of Warcraft designer Mark Kern reminded players on how they're mistreating their founder Gary Gygax, and they are, and this is something that they've been doing for a while.
Trying to censor the past.
Yeah, well, rewrite it to basically be like, well, yeah, we know that D&D's been around since like the 70s, 1970s specifically, but it was really problematic back then. And so we're going to address these issues today. So, in a preface written by Jason Tondro, a senior designer on Dungeons & Dragons, Tondro attacks the original creators, like Gary Gygax, by writing, quote, "Some language in the first iteration of D&D presents a moral quandary. The documents reproduced in this book include many pages of charts and tables alongside lists of monsters, spells, and magic items. But that game content also includes a virtual catalog of insensitive and derogatory language, words that are casually or hurtful to anyone with a physical or mental disability or who happens to be old, fat, not conventionally attractive, indigenous, black, or a woman. Some people have charitably ascribed this language to authors working from bad assumptions. In the 1970s, historical wargamers in America were predominantly white middle-class men. It isn't surprising that they would dub a class of soldiers the fighting man, but when in the pages of Greyhawk, the description of the Queen of Chaotic Dragons includes a dig at women's lib, the misogyny is revealed as a conscious choice. It's an unfortunate fact that women seldom appear in original D&D, and when they do, they're usually portrayed disrespectfully. That's referring to, like, chainmail bikinis or scale mail bikinis, which is actually a little bit more practical. Tondro went on, slavery appears in original D&D not as a human tragedy that devastated generations over centuries, but as a simple commercial transaction. The cultural appropriation of the original D&D ranges from the bewildering, like naming every 6th level cleric a llama, to the staggering gods, demigods, and heroes not reprinted in this book, includes game statistics for sacred figures revered by more than 1 billion people around the world. He wrote, "Were players expected to fight Vishnu, one of the principal deities of Hinduism, kill him and loot his +3 sword of demon slaying? It sounds pretty cool to me, actually, but okay." He concluded by saying this: "Despite these shortcomings, D&D has always been a game about people choosing to be someone unlike themselves and collaborating with strangers who become friends. It has slowly become more inclusive, and as the player base has become more diverse, the pool of creators who make the game has expanded to include people with a broader range of identities and backgrounds. As these new creators make the game more welcoming, the game has attracted new fans who in turn continue to make the game more inclusive. The future of D&D here at its 15th anniversary is bright." Of course, he's saying it is because all of that old, bigoted, problematic stuff of the past has been erased or rewritten, and now the game is basically, like, from what I can tell, it's
our game's gay now.
Seattle Cafe Simulator that just happens to take place where there are orcs and goblins and elves and dwarves.
So, it's just a big confetti parade of bullshit, and it's wheelchair accessible. It's for anybody who ever played any measure of D&D, it's pretty it's heartbreaking for a lot of people. My nephew, he's not a fan of it. All the kids that he plays tabletop with, nobody. I don't know any one person in my legitimate real life that is interested in any of these changes that have happened to D&D over the course of the last year or so, to make it more inclusive and less problematic, as they want to put it. I mean, Wizards of the Coast. When I first got out to Washington years ago, one of my friends was trying to get a job working there, and I'm so glad they never did, considering everything that has become since that time. But even back then, like, the writing was kind of on the wall with all the, the way that they just kind of took Magic the Gathering and turned it into just, a complete and utter farce. And, what they do with Dungeons and Dragons since they acquired it, I mean, all of it is just insane beyond belief, because it's like it's something that's worked fundamentally for decades, and you can pretty much just leave it to its own devices. But
ultimately the purpose of all of this is to destroy the IP anyway. That's the thing. They want the IP to die. That's why they pause it up, and they use these insecure narcissists, global homo, gay race communists to do it. And the gay race communists, they have a mental sickness that they can't cure, because that's why they think that they can just get all of this coddling and comfort and representation and diversity and all of this bullshit, and it's supposed to make them feel better about themselves, even in a game where you can literally do whatever you want because it uses your imagination. They're hell-bent on taking everyone else's imagination away from them. That's the difference. Like games like Dungeons and Dragons, like role-playing games in general, rule 0 is do what you want at your table with your friends. And I've been the reason why I picked this story is because, well, first of all, I have a long history of playing RPGs, but tabletop ones. But I have been ringing the bell on this for as long, if not longer, than Gamergate was around, like before 2013, I think, because I was seeing this stuff. Actually, I used to work in a game store, and I can tell you that I started to see it creeping in the late 90s, because when Vampire the Masquerade came out, I hated that game. Like I tried to play it. I hated that game. I hated the system. I disliked the setting. I was just like, okay, this isn't for me, because it just seems to be for, like, you know, chubby goth girls that want to feel like sexy and stuff. It was clearly taken out of like Anne Rice's books, right? And and that's where LARPing started. Like when it
I was going to say my only good memory of that game is actually from GDC one year, where I was caught up in what became a LARP, evidently, that was based around Magic the Gathering.
Oh,
or not Magic the Gathering, but sorry,
Vampire the Masquerade. Yeah.
And because I think I may have told the story once before, but basically when I ended up out in the barrio, at this makeshift kind of speakeasy, and this gal that I had encountered at the bar earlier that night, I said something to her how like she was kind of like an oasis from all the BO. She smelled like vanilla fields. She was evidently a stripper, and
oh yeah, a lot of like whores and prostitutes get involved. So like I lived in Chicago, and the scene, the LARPing scene for Vampire started in Chicago, and I know the people who started it. Like I was friends with one of the guys that started that whole thing.
Yeah, well, the GDC thing, we happened to be there for GDC, and it was just one of the after hours parties. And
that's what they. That's right.
And the after hour party itself was kind of built around a masquerade LARP. Like there was some club from the game that they had, like, you know, put up on the wall and all this kind of silly horseshit. So I mean, she had really nice boobs though. So I mean, like
there is that.
So like I said, that's like my one good memory about like that game is just like a little flashpoint out of my life. And I'll leave it at that. That's probably keep everything on rails.
That's cool. I appreciate that a little bit, but I think we'll make it. But yeah, like I'm saying that I've been warning about this for a very long time, and I said there's probably a video floating around where I said that they were going to come for Gary Gygax, because eventually they always come for the people who essentially created the thing that they claim to love. And he created the thing. And I don't know if people know this, but Gygax was a Christian. So this is, you know, the whole thing that was happening.
Like in the also make no sense.
The Satanic Panic didn't make any sense back then. Right, exactly. And like the whole Mazes and Monsters thing with Tom Hanks. Like, I mean, there are people who, you know, they're not well adjusted that get involved with hobbies, and they also go on to do things, but that has nothing to do with their hobbies. That's about those people, right? Like those kids that, you know, what was the shooting that happened, and they were trying to blame Doom, you know, Murder Simulator Doom for it. Yeah. Like that the Doom didn't do that. Yeah, the Columbine kids, the Doom didn't do that. Those kids were already pretty dysfunctional. There was probably other things going on. And I think the same thing with, you know, this Satanic Panic thing. And again, it doesn't make sense. Like Gary Gygax gave us a gift, and this is how we're treating it. But Elon Musk, not a big fan of that. So Grums got the attention of Musk. Shout out to Grums. Shout out to Musk. And it wasn't, by the way, the one guy I just read the quotes from, he wasn't the only one. There were a number of other people who also talked about you know, the problems, the problematic history of Dungeons and Dragons. and specifically about the Gygax, the Gary Gygax, the creator. And Elon Musk saw a post by Grums where he said, let me see if I can find the D&D creators, Gygax and others are erased and slandered at the same time. WotC, that's Wizards of the Coast, and Hasbro just released the new Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide, as well as the 40th anniversary Making of D&D book, whose forward slams the original creators and attempts to distance themselves. I spoke with one of the original creators, Rob Kuntz, who is one, he's like, of all the people who made D&D, if I remember correctly, Rob Kuntz is the last guy alive. All the rest have passed away. But Gary Gygax is gone, and all the other original people that were behind, you know, essentially the game that would later become D&D. I think it was called Chainmail, and it was more of like a tactical, you know, miniatures game. And then they decided to add role-playing elements to it. So anyway, let's see. Where was I? I spoke with one of the original creators, Rob Kuntz, at 3 Line Studio about the problem. Elon Musk saw the post and chimed in with a passionate response. Nobody, and I mean nobody, gets to trash Gary Gygax and the geniuses who created Dungeons and Dragons. What the fuck is wrong with Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast? May they burn in hell. This is actually a more fiery response from Musk that I've seen in a while. And this is exactly what we needed people to hear. So with Elon Musk voicing outrage, this new D&D is probably going to be a failure. And I just want to say to all of the people that I knew in my personal life that thought this wasn't a big deal, I told you I was right once again. That you should have been aware that this shit was going on. How much more disrespect are you going to put up with before you say I'm not going to contribute to this anymore? And in fact, I'm going to try to pull people away from this brand, because there's lots of RPGs, like tabletop games, on the market, and you can go with much better ones than this one if this is how they're going to act. Unless, of course, you want to simulate like being a fucking hobgoblin that like knows how to brew a really killer, you know, organic, free range coffee. I don't know. So they literally like have like the official Dungeons and Dragons cookbook. Like D&D is cooked, guys. It's over. At least the new versions.
I was gonna say, you know, the great thing the great thing about D&D is you can easily find old editions for free on the internet.
Oh, I own a bunch of old editions. Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, like, even if you're new, just, you know, you can just go and print an old edition out, or as I keep saying all this week, abandon all these goddamn large conglomerate IP, you know, warehouses that are just, you know, playing on your nostalgia for familiar brands. None of this stuff is worth staying invested in. It's all over. It's all done with. The best you can hope for is some risk-averse, lame, you know, homogenized version of the thing you used to care about.
Well,
that's
soulless. Most importantly, soulless.
Right,
yeah.
But that's what I mean. Is that at best, that's what you're in for. At worst, you're gonna get, like, you know, the kind of insanity you were just talking about, where it's all like, hey, let's take everybody on a happy, joy, feel good society parade down the middle of, like, you know, Prideville Confetti Square, and just like, you know, have just, like, you know, like a fun time getting to know each other as we go through the dungeon and learn more about ourselves and our friends along the way. It's just, it's completely up its own ass and around the corner. So, yeah,
that's a strange image.
Indeed. But yeah, there's no reason to even, like, really give it any of your time, your effort, and especially your investment of your you know, money.
Yeah, I would,
or attention.
I would say that if you know somebody who has older editions and you really want to play D&D, I would just go with those. But and there's also, like, a lot of, just like in the video game industry, there are a lot of independent startups, and they're doing their own little systems. There's a great channel called RPG Pundit. You should look him up. I had him on my show once a while back. We talked about D&D. I might have him come back on, because he is a He worked on at Wizards of the Coast on some of the older editions, and I think that he did the 5th edition or was involved in the 5th edition, which addressed a lot of issues. And he has some really great ideas, and he does a lot of work. The guy is very prolific. So like I would say, make the small guys big. You know, don't just move sideways. Maybe don't support Wizards of the Coast or Dungeons and Dragons in like a horizontal fashion, like going to an older edition or something like that. Maybe just find somebody completely new that's doing something new, that knows what the problem is, that wants to address it. So yeah, I would just go with that. Look up RPG Pundit. There's a couple of, I think there's a system called Dragon Slayer as well. And there's, I want to say it's like Catacombs and something that they are doing this, you know, without all this woke shit, and they're not attacking the original creators. In fact, they probably honor them. So anyway, let me know what you guys think about this one in the comments. We're going to move on to the next story. So Concord, not completely out of the news yet. Oh, and I wanted to say one thing about, I got a comment from Robert Johnson. He says the conceptual art alone that D&D produced was very inspirational at the time. Yeah, dude, I have like a couple of D&D art books from like the 80s, and it was like the 80s mostly, but the 80s and 90s. And they're like these, you know, acrylic oil paintings made by really great artists like Clyde Caldwell and Keith Parkinson and Larry Elmore. These guys were masters of the time, and they were considered illustrators by the art community because of course they were. Brom, he did like the artwork for Dark Sun. I have all that stuff. That shit was awesome. Like that was good. It was good work. Definitely like borrowing a lot from the, you know, classic sort of stories like Conan the Barbarian, you know, stuff by like Frank Frazetta and whatnot. So yeah, very good stuff. Anyway, but yeah, thank you, Robert John. That was the thing that ignited my imagination, was the artwork in those books. And that was part of like what made it work, you know? So anyway, thank you for that comment. All right. So this is a rumor, but it's probably true, that Sony is going to be getting a massive tax write-off for Concord after shutting down and closing the developer. That's probably why they did it, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is exactly what we said months ago when when the report came up and said that they were bringing life back into it. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense, because it seems like they would have to, you know, divest as much as humanly possible. The only thing I can imagine is they had enough time, because the only asset they had from the whole 10 years of this folly was an engine, evidently, you know. But the engine is an asset that they possibly could have offloaded to themselves in a lateral sale move, so they could just put it from one pocket into another, and then go and say, all right, you know, we can't have the game come out and do the free-to-play, because if they would have had that, then they couldn't get this tax sheltering that they're getting right now by, you know, ostensibly getting us all to pay for it one last time. Like, even if you didn't buy the game, you know, if you're an American taxpayer, you're now, you know, on the hook to some degree for know, paying for Concord. They're
gonna get your money one way or another, just like Dustborn, right?
Yep. Too big to fail, too corrupt not to you know, profiteer. So yeah, like this is what the DEI tax brought to the world. It's also what took it out of this world, because ultimately they did a risk analysis, I think, probably on what's the likelihood that we can make any money from doing free to play in terms of what we can recoup. And if it doesn't meet a certain threshold, then we're going to go ahead and just kill the whole thing and, like, you know, like, be done with it. And at least that way we'll get partial credit on our money back. Of course, the only good thing about this is because they're able to get, you know, a fraction of their investment cost, we might actually find out exactly how much it legitimately did cost altogether, you know, so that they can get the biggest refund possible.
Yeah. Although there is something interesting about this story, though, I want to mention. I think that there is a divide, it seems, between Sony of America and Sony of Japan. So this is another thing that came out of an Endymion video. He has some insiders that are sort of sharing information with him. He said many of the developers at Firewalk Studios, that's the studio that created Concord, were very confident that Sony would not cancel the game because of what the game represented for the company and the agenda at large. Sony America assured Firewalk that they were safe and Concord would come back better than ever in the future. However, the reason why Concord did die and Firewalk was closed was because of Sony Japan. During a company vote, Sony Japan overruled Sony America and rejected their proposition to allow Concord to be revived, claiming that the game was a massive failure, which it fucking was, and there was no reason to bring it back and waste more resources. Then Endymion shared this. Instead, this has led to what my source was told to cause Sony in general to opt for a tax write-off for Concord and Firewalk instead. My source told me that this write-off has led to Sony recouping somewhere between 25 to around 40% of the cost for Concord. So they didn't get their money back. They just lost less by just a little bit.
They lost less. But that's the thing, though. It's like the idea of how much more can we recoup is easier in a tax write-off than it was in Sony America's idea to say, well, let us do a freemium game where we can get people that kind of like once they play it, that's all we need them to do. But we all know, even when that beta was going on, I got approached for the beta 3 times, and it was just like, stop it, nobody wanted anything to do with that game.
Yeah.
So, to me, the worst thing is that they're able to still get the tax shielding, just because it's like the money for that, there's a lack of accountability for the corporate, in this instance. And even though it's not the full amount that they're getting back, thankfully, it's still kind of one of those things where it's like, for the flagrant kind of offense that they took with making that thing, the detached, just out of touch kind of mindset to, put all that into a title, making something for fundamentally absolutely no one and at the highest cost possible, seemingly, in game industry history, to just completely bungle something so epically,
Concord's failure is historical.
Taxes to have to,
yeah. Concord's failure is historical for gaming. Yeah, and there's I don't think there will ever be another crash quite like this again in quite some time. I mean, it'll be a decade within the making for it to happen again, and for something to be built up for a decade and get shut down in 10 days. Wow, I mean, that is peak, that's peak fuck around and find out. It's an annoyance for anybody that pays taxes that they're gonna have to put anything towards this thing, because it's such a waste of everybody's time and effort. Right. So okay. So when we talk about Sony, we're talking about the specifically the Sony PlayStation, not the because I think Sony, when you say that word, you think of there's more, right? They used to make the Walkman, and they got TVs, and they got what do you call it, sound systems and all kinds of other tech, and I'm sure that those are all different. Yeah, they're all different let's say subgroups within the larger group, right? Now I think that and this is just me, okay, I think that all companies should have a path to redemption. Whether they take it or not is up to them. But I don't necessarily take pleasure in watching any, company go under, because I know that real people who have no ideological investment are affected by this. Divisions, thank you, Art Force. That's what I was looking for. So what I'm getting at is that, okay, so we have this thing. Clearly, Sony of America is captured ideologically. Sony Japan, well, Japan is going through their own cultural revolution right now. It's starting, but they might be able to push back on it, and I hope that they do, because I like these countries. I like my country, America, and I like Japan. and others. So they need a path to redemption. So I'm going to say that what I would like Sony to do is to shut down their California main headquarters, move it back to Japan, get that woke shit out of your company, basically put it through the Elon Musk Twitter, blender, and then hopefully on the other side you'll have a chance to come back. Because I do believe, and I maintain this, that Sony can course correct, no matter how bad it gets. I don't think that's simply because here's the thing too. Our enemies want everything to burn down. They want this, right? So if we support this, it's like engaging in accelerationism. We're basically saying, yes, destroy it because I'm mad at them. I think that things that are supposed to fail should fail, but I think that if people say, let's hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right, let's fire some people, let's course correct, and let's see if we can pick up the pieces and build something new. I would basically I guess ultimately celebrate that, or at least say, hey, you see what the problem is. Hopefully you'll learn from this. You won't do this again, and we'll move forward. And I want this for all. I want this for Microsoft. I want this for EA, Activision, Blizzard, whatever. I want that. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think it's better that companies see what the problem is, address the problem, get rid of everything and everyone that is a part of the problem, and then get in new talent that is based in meritocracy, and then build from there. Even if it completely, because that's what happened in the reverse, right? Blizzard got paused, and Mark Kern himself used to work there because of things like cancel culture and the Me Too movement and unions that organized behind these people, and they pushed it in, and they changed the they changed the ecosystem of these companies. So why couldn't we do the reverse? Because if anything, they tell you the goal is to burn it all down. And I think that we give them what they want, then that's kind of a victory. And sure, the stuff that should fail. But I also think we should leave room for people to improve on it and make it better. So, whatever that's gonna, and also we can also do that while simultaneously supporting new developers, indie developers, hungry developers, creating new stuff. And I think that it's becoming more and more easy for those people to rise up as well. But I want a healthier, culture. I don't want a dead one. So that's basically what I'm saying. So
right.
All right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, I can appreciate what you're saying, but I would say in that regard, I'm far more interested in just supporting independent, new creatives and things like that. It's
sure.
The stuff that's happened with all these older IPs in recent years, it's just it's such an identity crisis. You're not even and the game industry is there's always people that are working on stuff independently, which is the nice thing. But when you're talking about in the mainstream game industry, a lot of the people have left it behind. And they're either now making their own independent things. If we end up talking about GTA today, the whole thing about the Hauser brothers not necessarily being there for GTA 6, I believe it's Dan. Is the one that's still there.
GTA 6 is cooked, man.
Oh yeah,
that was one of the. I don't know if I have it up here, but I think that was one of the stories I was potentially going to be looking at.
Yeah, I couldn't see a specific article that you have listed for it, so that's why I ended up doing the thumbnail.
No, it's okay that you bring it up. I probably was looking at it and I forgot to bring it in. But go ahead about GTA 6.
But yeah, so I did a little bit of research regardless, and I believe it's the new company that one of the Hauser brothers is working on is called Absurd Visions or Absurd something. Anyway, the point being is that the creatives behind these games that people care about and all this kind of stuff, they're not the same people, and this dearth of talent that was brought in. I truly believe that they were trying to set up the game industry and all these other forms of media. I think that they were planning on, the lockdown society kind of doing its thing, and there was going to be a whole, kind of folding in of of media to a certain degree. Thankfully, that doesn't seem to be happening just yet. But unfortunately, this identity crisis insanity they're putting everybody through, this queero, sexual, political agenda, I guess is probably what they would call it. The way that it has undermined so many different properties and things like that, I just don't know how anybody goes back to acting like these years didn't happen on, the stuff that's been affected. And that's why part of the reason why I'm just let that stuff kind of go by the wayside and actually support people that haven't, made stuff that's been corrupted quite like that. And I'm sure, it's easier said than done. And we all will have our, past kind of things that we cling to, and definitely by all means cling to your past, find things where you can, buy them secondhand, do whatever. But I mean, the idea of still keeping these larger companies funded, that's really the thing that I would, urge people to maybe reconsider, because and it's then and only then, that we can possibly get ownership into new hands by people who actually will have some fundamental passion or care or concern. But the more that these properties end up just another cataloged item and an even bigger bin of familiar IPs and, nostalgic brands, the worse it is for everybody, because the more they're homogenized they'll ultimately be and stay. So
yeah, fair enough.
And that's definitely the case with Grand Theft Auto 6 at best.
Yeah,
because
GTA. Well, I think the writing was on the wall for Red Dead 2. I mean, Red Dead 2 is pretty woke, even though people don't want to see it. Right. But it definitely had a lot of stuff in it that's very anachronistic for something that takes place in the Old West. I think that GTA 4. I know that I didn't ever play 5, but I did enjoy myself on 4. So I might stream that sometime. Get Nico out
5
there.
became a parody of the game that it was talking about. Well,
4 took itself, from what I heard, 4 took itself a little bit too seriously compared to San Andreas and Vice City and stuff. So
during GTA 4, the big thing in the gaming industry was proving that games were art, and so everybody kind of got up their own ass for a minute and tried to
Well, I don't think they ever got out of their
own.
Well,
ass. No. They certainly did to the larger degree, but like I said, there was a concerted effort to get really pretentious about the power of gaming. Yeah, and at least from there, GTA seemingly kind of got back to they're kind of the best of what they had done in the past, at least when GTA 5 first came out. A decade later, though, and they're sitting here working on content that doesn't allow you to target any characters the way that you used to. It specifically makes it so that women are off limits for being shot at as one of the targets in the game, which these games are made for adults, and the idea that all this censorship stuff is happening to people who are supposed to be able to consume stuff freely, that's not been a problem for decades, all of a sudden, that's the part that kind of gets to me, and that's the thing that I really can't support, knowing that Rockstar got hit hard by the Me Too movement. Those are the people who had to pay the DEI tax the hardest. And
of course, as usual.
And maybe, I read an article that Rockstar was concerned about putting out a game during the Trump administration, so they were happy that they were going to get it out before, during the last administration. But here it slipped again. And so, what does that mean? If anything, it might actually give them, but they're so far into whatever they're doing now, it's going to be what it's going to be. But not even for the woke stuff. I mean, the way that their games have just kind of, you end up beating a dead horse. There's so many bait and switches that they've done over the course of a decade with GTA
Sure.
5 in terms of like all that kind of stuff. I mean, like, yeah, like, will the game look nice enough? Sure. Will it have a decent story mode? Why not?
Yeah.
Will it be subtle in the way that they go about, like, you know, doing like the intersectional feminism kind of stuff and all this whatever that's going to be in there?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like, I'm sure you probably have a higher degree of people working there that you know, have at least some level of merit, even within like whatever kind of crazy mindset has overtaken that place. But if you go and look at their own literature, they're very much about, you know, promoting diversity and inclusivity and all this. It's got all the buzzwords for current day Rockstar.
Sure.
And you know, the guy that I went to college with, he's definitely a completely different person these days. And that happened, you know, during COVID hell world. And like, so he was, you know, everybody at Rockstar is always working on GTA at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
I've been holding my breath for anything good for quite some time now. But yeah, everything that you see coming out about it just kind of reaffirms that, you know, it's like it'll probably be at best it'll be GTA 5 and GTA Online with like a little bit nicer kind of trappings,
Mm-hmm.
but it'll just be more of the same, like
All
it's
right.
been for 20 some odd years.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, like, I'll be happy to eat crow if it didn't turn out to be trash. I
Yeah.
actually hope it isn't, but I feel like I think that GTA might be cooked. I did see a comment at the beginning of the show that I want to read out. Maybe you guys, if Shadow Ryu is still here, if you're still watching, you said, looks like some big creator is either getting Me Too'd or turns out to be scum, but the believe all women crowd is out in full force again. This was right after I started the show. So let me know if you're still there. Can you give me specifics? Because I don't know about this story and I'd like to know. I always report on the latest guy getting canceled because I know it's a guy getting canceled. Come on. All right. So let's move on to the next story. Did you guys know that Steam is rife with anti-Semitic hate and extremism? That's right. So let me look at this article from PC Gamer. The Anti-Defamation League, a U.S. organization that aims to combat anti-Semitism and support Israel, has published a report alleging that Steam is, quote, rife with extremism and anti-Semitism, end quote, and accusing Valve of allowing the spread of hateful and extremist material through a, quote, highly permissive approach to content policy, end quote. So basically letting people talk openly. The ADL said its report is based on what it is described as an unprecedented platform-wide analysis of public data on Steam, including more than 458 million user profiles, 152 million profile and user group avatar images, and 610 million user comments. The ADL's Center on Extremism found, quote, millions of examples of extremist and hateful content, including explicit hate symbols like sun and rads and happy merchants, as well as copy pastas, blocks of text that are copied and pasted to form images or long form writing shaped into swastikas being shared on the platform. The clear gaps in Steam's moderation of this content inflict harm, this is according to the ADL, harm by exposing untold users to hate and harassment, enabling potential radicalization and normalizing hate and extremism in the gaming community, the ADL wrote. Understanding the extent of extremist and hateful content on the platform is key to fighting the proliferation of hate online. Pepe the Frog, which I will, that's their example. Pepe the Frog and swastikas are the most common extremist symbols found on Steam, according to the report, respectively representing 54.6% and 9.1% of detected symbols. The ADL also found tens of thousands of pieces of terrorism-related content on Steam community, including more than 15,000 public accounts with profile pictures featuring flags or logos of ISIS, Hezbollah, Hamas, and others. Hundreds of accounts were used or found using photos of white supremacist mass murderers Brenton Tarrant and Anders Breivik as their avatar images. Game Mods also touched on the report, which claims to have found hundreds of mods for games, most notably Gary's mod that specifically references mass shootings. The report says, quote, Steam's public-facing content policy includes no mention of hate or extremism, which isn't entirely accurate. The Steamworks documentation specifically states that content with, quote, hate speech, i.e. speech that promotes hatred, violence, or discrimination against groups of people based on ethnicity, religion, gender, age, disability, or sexual orientation, end quote, should not be published on the platform. Steam's code of conduct does not make specific reference to hateful or extremist content, but does forbid harassment, disruptive, or damaging behavior, and the violation of the personal rights of other users. More on point are questions about the application and effectiveness of Steam's moderation policies. The report says Steam appears to be technically capable of moderating content and has done so selectively in the past in response to external pressure. One example that would be the removal of Pepe the Frog emoticons from the Steam marketplace following the DMCA takedown. What? Pepe? Okay. Feels bad, man. Following a DMCA takedown notice filed by Pepe creator Matt Fury, but its overall approach has been largely ad hoc, with Valve failing to systematically address the issue of extremism and hate on the platform. Valve updated their community rules in 2023 to provide a much more granular breakdown of what is and is not allowed, but as noted at the time, the real question is how it would go about enforcing those rules, because this has been an ongoing problem for Steam. We reported on Valve's hate group problem in 2018, and in 2022, U.S. Senator Maggie Hassan sent a letter to Valve boss Gabe Newell, alleging, quote, a significant presence of users displaying and espousing neo-Nazi, extremist, racial supremacist, misogynistic, and other hateful sentiments, and asking what Valve was going to do about it. Valve needs to make significant changes to their approach to platform governance in both terms of policy and practice to address the ways in which hate and extremism have proliferated on the Steam platform, the report states. As ADL has stated previously, policymakers must demonstrate their commitment to disrupting hate and harassment in online multiplayer games. While government is necessarily focused on the dangers posed by social media and AI, policymakers must also pay attention to the immediate threats pervasive in online gaming environments. The ADL has also put pressure on Twitch recently, leading to temporary bans for a group of Arab streamers who made jokes at a TwitchCon panel at the organization the organization interpreted as anti-Semitic. I have reached out to Valve for comment. Okay, so this is from PC Gamer. Let me show you all the actual ADL page. You guys can see it. Oh, I already have it displayed here. So I wanted to talk about this because this obviously comes back to the discussion about freedom of speech. I think we did a thing where Trump talked about the importance of free speech and all the things that he wants to do for freedom of speech going forward when he gets into his administration. Of course, Trump being the president of the United States limits what he can do. He can obviously only do this in effect through the federal government at the federal level, but not like with individual companies. But I think that the promotion of free speech as an American value is what is really important here. I don't know what Gabe Newell thinks about this, but I will say this. The ADL has targeted us, like me and the people over at Honey Badger Radio and other men's rights activists, as well as the SPLC and Citizens, I think it's Citizens United. They have all labeled us like, what is it? Like male supremacist, masculinist, misogynist, extremist. And what the ADL considers extremist, by the way, is extremely, like, they play very fast and loose. Like, they consider Catholicism extreme. So, like, this is, like, something that we should be very careful. And the ADL is extremely powerful. They have an extremely powerful lobby. They have a lot of money. They have a lot of influence. And they can do a lot of damage. So when the ADL starts complaining about Steam being extreme, then you can expect that Steam is going to have a pressure applied to them to act. And this will include things like Brutus Rambo's list of woke DEI detected games, because they will see that as extreme. So I just wanted to point out that, first of all, the ADL doesn't have a lot of credibility, but they have a lot of power. So anyway,
Well, thankfully,
praise
Gabe
kick.
is. I was gonna say, thankfully, Gabe is very interested in keeping his private company a private company. That's like the saving grace at this point in time. But ultimately, they're going to try to get Steam to capitulate and be under some form of regulation to have more tracking over players, so they can institute some kind of social credit score, kind of lockdown bullshit. I would imagine, because the console makers, both Sony and Microsoft, they're all in for that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, like when you are on PlayStation right now, whenever you're having the voice chat or anything like that, or on Xbox, those voice chats are being recorded so that they can be referred to later. If anybody reports on anything, and then they hold them for such a time, and then or they have access to be able to go back and get them for whatever length of time if things get reported. So like, we're already living in a weird dystopian security state, Black Mirror society already. So it just seems like more kind of like encroachment on the idea of people being able to have some degree of latitude to speak freely and just have like a space that is like you're talking about, like you've been talking about for a decade, and then spaces that are actually a healthy thing to have, but they're being specifically misinterpreted as a way to try to undermine culture in general.
Definitely. Art Force says Gabe N isn't getting any younger. We all know what will happen when the authoritarian bootlickers take over. Yeah, it seems like this has been the case. Like I was gonna say about Gary Gygax, going back to the D&D thing. One thing I learned that was really unfortunate is that a lot of Gary Gygax's own children are throwing him under the bus. Like, they're not responding to these like slanderous comments made by Wizards of the Coast. And I don't know if it's to protect their bottom line or whatever, but it's really unfortunate when your kids don't protect you. And this reminds me of Christopher Tolkien, who basically like held on to his father's legacy, with Lord of the Rings until he died. And the moment he did, the Tolkien estate just sold all of his shit. So like there has to be, this almost comes back to like the importance of like, the relationship between a father and his children, because the children, if they're close to their father, they will try to keep the legacy alive. And so, Lord of the Rings is going to be like a troubled IP for a long time. And I think that the same thing with D&D, it's already happened because his kids didn't like protect his, what he made. And that could also, I don't know if Gabe Newell has kids, but if he passes away, the next person is going to come in and probably eat it from the inside out.
Right. Yeah, very much so. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
That seems to be the way these things happen anymore.
It's kind of the nature of actually large companies, is that like the next generation could just destroy what came before, just like with laziness or disinterest or even outright malice. Fracas Maximus said, "Oh, Lauren Southern appeared at a parliamentary hearing on Russian interference. Interesting. We'll watch later." Yeah, Lindsay, my wife, was watching it the other day. Let's see. Sophie Bliss says, howdy, Sodi. Zerang says, the story about Gygax paying more attention to gaming than his wife and kids. If that's true, that may be why Gygax's kids are keeping mum. I don't know, because one of his kids was actually really interested in keeping holding on. Like, one of his kids is actually supportive of, keeping D&D like its integrity intact. But the other two, one of them, they're like on the side of WotC. So anyway, so we'll have to see what happens with that. Now we're gonna move on to what I currently have is basically the last story. This is about the Real Game Awards. So let me know what you guys think about that other one in the comments. All right. So let me just display it here. So the Real Game Award, this is good news, I think.
This is Craig's
Stuttering
thing, right?
Craig's. Yeah, Stuttering Craig's, the Real Game Awards, that's the guys over at Side Scrollers, will both celebrate positive achievements in gaming and shine a light on some of its most abysmal failures. With Jeff Keighley's coat and tie affair, the Game Awards claims to represent gamers and give them a voice. It's actually anything but that. Yeah, Jeff Keighley, by the way, from what I understand, he hobnobbed with like people like Jeffrey Epstein. So, and then that might seem strange to you that you think, oh, it would just be politicians and Hollywood celebrities. But like the gaming industry is bigger than Hollywood. Like it's way bigger.
I just told you about my own experience at a GDC. Like, yeah, the sex trade and the game industry are not strange bedfellows.
Right, right. So yeah, the Dorito Pope, that's exactly it. So the star-studded corporate-backed event, this is the Game Awards, the Jeff Keighley Awards, doesn't actually speak for the gaming community at large. Yeah, it's basically become, and I mean, it has been for a while. That's why I haven't watched the Game Awards in many years, because I was saying that it was essentially turning into the Oscars, which is essentially a fart-huffing event of people that make content specifically to win awards. It's what?
Glad-handing society.
Yeah, it's turning into the Hunger Games. Yeah, they're like the elites in the Hunger Games. Norwegian Black Templar says, "Is that a doggo I hear?" Oh, I think that's is that bird? Is that bird still making noise on your end?
I think it's either the bird or it could have been a dog across the street. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, it doesn't bother me or anything, but they were asking, and we thought we would clear up the mystery. Apparently, it might be a dog.
It might have been a dog, but it might have been a bird.
Might have been a bird too. Yeah. Okay. So nominees are decided by a committee of industry insiders from shill media outlets like Polygon, IGN, and Variety, which what the hell do they know about video games? And despite Keighley claiming that players can vote on award winners, their votes only count for 10% of the results. A whopping 90% is actually determined by that panel of insiders. So remember, I believe that the some of the games like Black Myth Wukong were nominated for Game of the Year, despite the fact that the game's press hated that game, or at least they wanted to throw shade at it as much as possible because they wanted to promote, I don't know, fucking, Dustborn or something.
Yeah.
But
I took a very cynical view of this on Will of the Fans the other day. We went through and talking about what should win versus what will win, and I was just pointing out every few minutes that award shows are meaningless, stealth marketing, this is all fuckery, and this is just a way to try to put everybody off, but that was about Jeff Keighley's awards. This is at least something that is built around the concept of an actual fan community.
Yeah, I mean, you guys don't need like Jeff Keighley to like validate your tastes. Like, I mean, I know you guys know that now, but that used to be a thing. Like, people wanted their game to win Game of the Year just so they can tell people that my game is Game of the Year. And it's like, but you don't have to do that. Like, they're not going to nominate. If you have good taste, your game won't get nominated. It's just like the Oscars. The best movies don't win Oscars. Like the movies that don't have the content that the Oscar judges want. They want something that sends a progressive message, that's anti-Western, anti-capitalist, whatever the flavor of the week is. They want movies about slavery. They want movies about World War II and the Holocaust. They want movies about feminism, where women are like taking charge and whatnot. They want movies about like gay obese men who commit suicide. Like literally The Whale won an award, right? That's what they want movies about, so that they can, like, they literally took. Do you ever see the movie Naked Gun 33 1/3?
Oh, anybody? It's been a while, but yeah.
Okay, so in Naked Gun 33 1/3, there's the funniest scene that went under the radar when I first saw it because it didn't click for me. But if you watch it now, you'll probably get it. Is that Frank Drebin, the cop played by Leslie Nielsen? He's got to like infiltrate the Oscars, right?
Right.
And the Oscars is happening, and one of the envelopes is like a bomb or something like that. And he has to he goes in undercover, and they're doing these announcements. And of course, it's a way for the movie to have a whole bunch of like famous cameos in it. And they all come out and they're giving Oscars away, and every movie that's nominated is like the same like plot. It's like one woman's struggle to and blankety blank, and they all have titles like an affair in Rome, or like they have these like goofy like 90s movie titles that are all the same, like Basic Instinct and like Fatal Attraction. Very funny. I mean, I was cracking up, and that was literally like I think it was the Zucker brothers that made that movie. They were essentially poking fun at Hollywood's elitism. So the Game Awards are the same now. Like that's why you're getting like Last of Us Part 2 and like I think that one's nominated. I think Dragon Age, the Veilguard was not, and they're really upset about that. But I think
Veilguard was nominated for a technical award in Jeff Keighley's bullshit.
They don't even deserve that. Come on.
Right. But it will likely get that because I'm sure they'll want to be able to, because like that's the whole thing. It's just stealth marketing, like I'll give you a technical award. You can go and put Game of the Year edition on one of your games to try to sell it a little bit. Yeah. That's what this thing, and that's you were on point when you said we don't need the validation for any of this stuff. At this point in time, games are safe territory to just, if you like it, you like it. You don't need anybody else to tell you one way or the other,
Yeah,
and,
no, for sure. Well, I think that the Stuttering Craig, the Real Game Awards thing, I think that is more putting the power in the hands of the actual people who play the games to vote. So,
and if you are gonna like pay attention to anything, pay attention more to something like that is actually just kind of, a little bit more honest and connected to the actual people that it pertains to, because otherwise it's just like that Pride Gaming bullshit that we did our little expose on. Jeff Keighley's operation is no different. It's still like a shakedown system. So
yeah, exactly. All right, so anyway, so according to X, this new show, the Real Game Awards, will do more than celebrate the positive achievements of the games players love. It will also shine a light on the abysmal failures and DEI disasters of the gaming industry, which is this screen that I'm sharing with you guys. And I'm gonna have to end the show here pretty soon because I gotta go over.
I know you gotta get over there by noon.
Yeah, like in the next 10 minutes. But real quick, so here's the DEI Slop of the Year awards that Grum's proposed. We don't know if this is actually like a real thing, but I bet it would be. Southern Craig did say, I said this in another thread, but
a good way to get engagement.
Yep. So what do you think? I just want your opinion. Which of these is the DEI Slop of the Year? Is it Concord, Dragon Age: The Veilguard, Dustborn, Star Wars Outlaws, Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League, or Unknown 9: Awakening?
God, that is a tough
Did your turd not make the list?
All those are some like the biggest turds, and we're talking about how Concord is historic in terms of its failure.
It is.
So
a landmark.
But all these are great examples for specific kinds of reason, either as cultural touchstones, this and that. But Concord, when you factor in everything, I'm gonna have to go with Concord just simply because the epic nature of its grand fail. Like all these others are extreme failures and completely off the mark and detached and deranged and debased in a variety of ways, but Concord is something else entirely.
Yeah. Flop of the year. I think that for me, maybe you measure it based on like a flop is measured by how much money it lost. Yeah. I think that as bad as all of these are and how much harm they've done, if there was even an IP to hurt in the first place, like for Dragon Age, Suicide Squad, or Star Wars, I'm going to have to go with Concord as well, just because of the sheer amount of money that it lost and how much of an impact it's having on the industry. But I want to know what you guys think about that in the comments. So let me know. I really have to head out now. I'm going to be going over. Well, there's going to be a stream on this channel in 10 minutes. We're going to be hanging out with the It's-based Game Jam guys, Dean, who he used to work in the industry himself. And I'm going to be playing Stranglehold on the PS3. It's the John Woo's stranglehold. So hopefully I'll see you guys there. Thank you so much, John, for joining me on the show. If you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave me a comment, let me know what you guys think about what we talked about in the show today, and please, please, please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you so much for coming on today's episode of The Week in Culture, and we will talk to you guys in the next video. Long live Vivian.
With the glass ceiling broken, all the oppressed groups shall prosper, especially the most oppressed group of all, gamers.
I want people in the industry to be a little bit louder about people being mean to other people, and maybe say it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
Maybe say we don't want you around if you're going to be a cunt.
Yeah.
And hateful. And that the games industry is diverse naturally. Not because anyone's making them be diverse. Because the world is diverse, you stupid motherfucker. And if you have a problem with that, come fight me. Physically. Bitch.
Has anyone taken you up on that yet?
No, because they're all pussies.
Yep.
Down here, salt is a way of life.
Obviously, the environment down here is all salt. The ceiling's salt, the floor is salt, the walls are salt, and to an extent, the air is salt. And you breathe that in, and you can constantly taste the salt.